Hi, welcome everyone. Great to be here. So we're going to tune in to Raphael today and connect with Raphael's beautiful messages. As always, of course, we are delighted to be here with you from the angelic realm. And when we are speaking of we want to remind you that although you identify myself as Archangel Raphael, it is a collective of our energetic fields that is attuning to all of you and your vibrations to support you during these momentous shifts and times. And so it is our understanding you're wanting to talk to us, can ask us what is on your mind. And so, what is it?
Hi, Raphael. So we're going to ask some questions from the group today. And the first question we have is, how do you deal with a family member who is a narcissist? And what are the signs of a narcissist?
It is that this is very difficult on many levels. For it is that there are many things that are labeled in your collective around disabilities of sort, and often those energies deeply affect the individual that is experiencing it. And yet for the narcissist, it is although it impacts them on many other levels, it is much more impactful on those in which they are around and can create a lot of stress and trauma, a sense of invalidation, a feeling as though you are going crazy or that something is wrong with you, as they will often criticize repetitively and reprimand or have many rules or be very controlling, move into a tantrum if they are not getting what they want, invalidating who it is that you are and your feelings. And this can be very detrimental to another in this particular relationship. And so it is important to become conscious and aware, for there are different levels of what you label in your culture as a narcissism. And some of it is more deeply amplified, in which it is quite obvious, but often it is what is called covert or not so obvious. It can be subtle at first, or they can often be very charming and alluring and beautiful and loving as they invite you into their space. And yet over time, they create a sense of many rules and a sense of isolation. And they often want to do things in a certain way or have certain ways that they go about things. And when it is not going in that way, they have a difficult time adjusting or becoming flexible. It is that a narcissism is difficult in flexibility if things move out of alignment as how they were meant to shift or unfold, part of their need for control. This occurs within them from a sense of not feeling stable and not being fully loved early, very early at birth and in the first few years, when there is not a sense of security or a sense of attachment, especially to the mother figure or to that of the caretaker that they bond with at an early age. As this can either begin to expand and develop and unfold further and further, creating a dynamic that when they become an adult can deeply affect those that they love around them. It is that they look to and think about you when they are needing something. And in many regards, you are there to fulfill their needs. And when those needs don't need to be filled, they're not really thinking about you. And yet the one who is in a sense labeled as the victim of the narcissist is often thinking about them, worrying about them, trying to make sure that they are okay, figuring things out, and yet they are not thinking of the other. And so there are many nuances and complications to this particular energy that presents itself. And they are often very self-centered, selfish, focused in on who it is that they are, and egocentric, although it may not be obvious at first, where they can hide it in a charity or hide it in something they are doing that appears to be for another or for the earth or in a beautiful way. And yet behind that, there is a deep sense of selfishness in which they are bringing everything ultimately back to themselves, having a difficult time with empathy, although they may at first bring forth empathy. And if you get down to the depth of it, it is not there. Their sense of criticism and invalidation of you can be overwhelming at times. And yet one who grows up in a family where a parent is a narcissist may not recognize it for quite some time as they move into adulthood, and yet they find difficult time being with them. It's very hard to be in their energy, for it is always poking and invalidating, criticizing, putting down, and making the other feel at some level as if there is something wrong with them or that they are crazy, and yet they are not. It is simply a deflection. And so it is very important for those in a relationship with a narcissist to recognize that unlike most things, that over the evolution of deep work and reflection, one can grow and change. They have a difficult time changing or adapting to new situations or environments or reflection. Although they may appear that they are doing so, they do not actually change. And so coming to terms with the fact that they are not going to change is very important when you are in a relationship of a parent or sibling, a lover, a friend, a boss that is a narcissist, and then making a conscious decision as to whether you are going to be in their presence or not. Of course, with a family member, it is more difficult, for often you feel obligated or shamed not to be with them. And yet it is very important to have extremely strong boundaries around the relationship that is contained, and to go into it knowing that things will not be any different than they were the last time you were with them, and without having any expectation for it to be other than it has been, with a knowing that you are making an effort and a willingness to be in their company because they are a parent or a sibling or a loved one of some sort. And that you do so with a sense of witnessing, watching, observing their behavior in a way where you bring empathy and understanding to the place in which they are at. But very important to recognize that it is not your fault, that you have done nothing wrong, that you are not crazy, that you are worthy, for they will move deep into the essence of your being and reflect an energy of deep unworthiness, for it is that is at the core of what is occurring within them, for there is a sense of insecurity that arises during an early detachment of childhood. And so moving forward with a narcissist, if you can remove yourself from the relationship, this is ideal. However, at times this is not possible, nor do you want to due to the proximity of them as a family member or perhaps a boss or whatever it may be. To be very clear in your boundaries, to not expect them to be any different than they are, to allow them to have their tantrum or rage when they don't get their way, still sticking to your guns in a sense as to what your plans are, what you're going to do, regardless of how much they act out or lay on the floor and kick their feet. Of course, not literally, but energetically, and being clear and stabilized in who you are. They deeply respect those that hold their boundaries, stand in their power, and move forward with what it is that they need to do, because it is that somehow makes them feel more safe. Otherwise, they're too much in control, and this amplifies and mirrors back to them their own narcissism. And so we are hopeful that this is somewhat supportive in this particular question in which you are asking.
Thank you, Raphael. And so I just want to elaborate on the question a little bit of, if we're a person that continuously attracts people that have these tendencies into our life, what is that mirroring back to us?
Oh, it is an inability to stand in your power, to hold your own boundaries, to move forward with your agenda, to be clear in the direction that you are going. And it is that you are easily swayed, like in any direction that is pulling you without your own compass or direction. For it is the polar opposite. For the narcissist is often has an inability to be flexible as they hold to what they believe is how things should go. And they will attract another who is flexible, who they can begin to mold and move in the direction in which they are wanting. And so if one continues to bring themselves, other than in a family relationship, which is also part of a soul contract, into this, it is about coming into an awareness of self, fully present in that your direction is being held. And you may need to do that for a period of time in a very rigid way where you're not flexible either, in order to be able to start to really own your own sense of power, stand grounded in who you are, moving forward in your own direction without being pushed over, controlled, knocked down, invalidated, and criticized by another. And so when that occurs, actually the narcissist begins to have more respect for you and will begin to almost back off a bit. But if they can find any place of a loophole where they can get in there and manipulate you on some level, sometimes they'll give you a gift to manipulate you, or they'll lure you in with something else that they have that you want, until you've come into their den, in a sense, and you're all cuddled in there and you're getting the cookies that you were looking for, whether it be a gift or admiration, or it could even be in a relationship, sex, or whatever it may be. And then you're all sweet and comfortable in there. And then the criticism, the attacking slowly seeps to seep in. And you start to want what you were getting, and you have been manipulated or controlled, or you're receiving something from them, even though it may be subtle and you were unaware of it at the time. You'll start to mold your personality, your way of being, to meet their needs in order to maintain that feeling, that the original feeling that you may have received, or the thing you may have gotten, or the cookies, or the admiration, or whatever it may be, or the approval often of a parent or an elder sibling. You want to be approved by them. You want them to recognize you. And so you're seeking validation outside of self, which you will never receive ever from a narcissist. And so you're always looking and grasping for their approval to get something that you're never going to get. And so it requires within you then to be clear on your boundaries, clear just as the sun sets every night, and that there is nothing you can do to keep it from setting. It's within your own being. It will do that. There is nothing that you can do to change their behavior. You cannot change them. And that is the biggest piece to get. And oh, well, if I work with them and I talk to them and we do this or we do that, or I listen more, or I'm more compassionate, or I'm more understanding, or whatever it may be that you're trying to do to seek their approval or to get them to change, they are not going to change. And so in that recognition of that real knowing of that, then you can enter with great awareness, with the spotlight on that, into the relationship consciously. All right, they're not going to change. Do I still want to be in this relationship? Do I need to be in this relationship? Is this a parent or a sibling or a boss that requires me at this time to engage? How much am I going to engage? Under what circumstances am I going to engage? What boundaries am I going to hold up? Am I able to recognize that I should have zero expectations of them, that they're not going to meet my needs, that my needs need to be met somewhere else. And so in that, then holding your ground, moving forward in a direction of a knowing of where you're going and not being pulled here and there by others and their agendas, those that are easily pulled into other people's day lives and agendas when the to-do list that they have is always sitting and waiting, because at the knock of the door or the phone call or the request of another, they are off helping someone. That is the vibration and the energy that is more susceptible to be in relationship with a narcissist, which is an opportunity for growth and recognition of that. And one then may need to come really deeply into almost rigidity in the way that they move forward to begin to balance that within themselves. And then their flexible, sweet, open, helpful nature can align with that sense of inner self, because that part of them is beautiful and important, and you are wanting that to be there and to be amplified. But a narcissist will spot that in a crowd like a moment, that softness, and they'll hook in as quickly as they can to lure you in to have their needs met, in which case you find doing for the narcissist, being invalidated and criticized without reciprocal in the energetic balance. And so their need to control is something that then you begin to recognize that no, they cannot control you if you are very clear on what your boundaries are, what you're going to do, where you're going to go, or you're not going to go. And so let's say that they want you to be at the airport 3 hours or 7 hours before the plane takes off, and you're like, no, I'm not going to do that. And they start to have a tantrum. You need to leave, you need to leave, you need to leave. And you just stick to your guns of what it is that you originally were going to do without appeasing them. The more you keep appeasing them, the more they recognize that they have room to manipulate you, and then they have no respect for you.
Thank you, Raphael. So if someone is continuously finding themselves in this situation, it is really about stepping into rigidity in their goals and their things. But a lot of people then are afraid to become narcissists in the attempt of, healing themselves from this old pattern that they have.
Yes. And so if a narcissist does not have the real deep ability to quickly apologize, to reflect, to recognize their part, and so often there are different tendencies here that have been described that can fall into the category of anyone, and all of you carry some of them to some degree. But it is the full package of this that becomes dangerous. And so, yes, it is important not to get so self-centered, so introspective, so focused on self that you've shut out the world and you move into more of a narcissist tendency. But it is that as long as you are continuously applying some self-reflection and are able to easily recognize when that behavior may be rearing its head and apologize. Oh, I didn't mean to be so harsh when I said that, and I was feeling a little stressed out, and actually this is what I meant, or whatever it may be. That type of reflection you often won't feel or experience in a true narcissist, especially one that is fully amplified into its fullest capacity. Now, there are varying levels of narcissism, and some are extraordinarily damaging to the child as a parent, to the point that it takes quite some time to recover. And then there are different levels, and some are what we call these covert narcissists, and much more subtle in their manipulation, in their luring in their getting you to do for and take care of and fix all things for them, in that they are holding some kind of a cookie for you. And so all those things need to be assessed. There are nuances in this. There's nothing about narcissism that is black and white. But the rigidity that we are speaking of is to be implemented in anyone who recognizes that their agenda is always swiped and always put at the bottom of the list by them going out to care for others so much. They are have more of a tendency to attract a narcissist. And the more that they can stand in their power with clarity of their own agenda moving forward, the less susceptible they will be. And so that's where we're talking about bringing in that rigidity temporarily, not permanently, just to start to create new neural pathways and patterning of the recognition to put first in your calendar self-care, put first in your calendar the agendas of things you need to complete to move forward with your dreams and aspirations, etc. And then in the calendar, the needs of others versus vice versa.
Thank you so much, Raphael. And so the next topic is about the question is, Raphael, would you please tell us something about the main topics we're facing now, like the big solar flash that activates our DNA, the pole shift, and the energy shift in April and October next year? Thank you.
Wow. This is something to be careful of. This worrying about things that have not or are not occurring as of yet, like April and October, and yet there are astrological events in alignment with your planet that can come into alignment that one can be aware of from the study and understanding, and we are aware of also from our perspective, that can influence the vibration of the planet and certain events to take place. But with the solar flare and the energies that are bombarding you, and they are amplified and will continue to be amplified for several years here, including the shifting of the magnetic poles and fields, it is that they shine light and they flare up, in a sense, within you what is already there. They amplify the vibrations in which you're holding. And so they're intense, and you feel more intensity around whatever emotion it is you're feeling. And it intensifies on the world platform and brings to light, as it shines more light, literally, from the sun on those things that need to be seen. And so in that, it amplifies whatever energy is present. So if there's a presence of violence or a tendency for that violence during the flare will rise, and you'll notice that across the globe, an uptake in that. However, it is the same that if there is more gentleness, more sweetness, more compassion, more love, more empathy, more understanding within you and the collective, that gets amplified. So it is a very wise to moderate, to be aware of where it is that you are. The more you are feeling unstable, the more you are out of balance, the more ungrounded you are, the more anxious you are, the more the solar flare will amplify, will flare that within you. It is amplifying whatever it is you're already feeling. So if you're already feeling insane, you're going to feel more insane. If you're already feeling more stabilized, grounded, and in peace, you're going to feel more of that. And that is why it is creating this division, this polarity is even shining, and you're more conscious of it across the globe, because you are being affected by the solar flares. You are being affected by the change in the magnetic fields. You are being affected by the astrological events that are occurring, just as though the water is affected by the full moon. But it amplifies that within you that already is. So what we are encouraging you to do is not to worry about what might happen in April or in October, but to continuously bring yourself to presence and to moderate what it is within you, where it is that you are, knowing that the light that is coming in is amplifying that for you. Now, sometimes it will shine in and bring within disturbed energies, and it will amplify that, but that's an opportunity to clear it and to heal it and to unravel those layers to get to that sense and that place of serenity for that then to be amplified. So the timelines on the planet, from our perspective in August, when we were communicating with you, we're moving at a rapid pace in a particular direction. And to our delight from the angelic realm, all of the work and all of the prayer and all of the codes and all of the meditating and all of the grid work and all of the energy of moving forward for the unfolding of the light within had created a very big turn in the timeline and elevated you into a much higher timeline in the human collective, moving in a beautiful direction. And so we're encouraging you to amplify that momentum that is already occurring right now on the earth, to by continuing your practices, continuing your meditation, continuing your breath work, continuing eating clean, continuing letting go of old stored emotions, continuing reflecting upon yourself, continuing to love yourself, continuing to open up your pineal gland, continuing to ground and connect to the earth. All of these things that you are doing regularly and that we are working with you also in the codes to begin to code you up to a higher octave, are all aligning you with the amplification of that in which you are wanting to amplify, where the light of the sun flare is shining upon it. So make sure that you focus not so much on what's going to happen in the world around you, what outside events are going to take place, what is that going to be, because that is also a distraction from going within. And so there's this need by the I or the ego to what will happen to the financial system? What will happen in the war? What will happen? Will there be an earthquake? Will the magnetic poles shift? Will there be big solar flares? Will whatever it may, will there be famine? Will there be big storms? Will the volcanoes explode? That is an unfolding of nature and of the collective that is interwoven and doing what it is doing. But the best thing that you can do in that process is to align with the highest frequency within you and continue to allow the elements, such as the solar flares themselves, to amplify the resonance that it already exists within your being, rather than distracting in the wondering of the future timeline, which is actually a distraction from doing the inner work that is needed, because it keeps the mind occupied in the future rather than in the presence of the now.
Thank you, Raphael. So I was wondering, I guess the next question here is, there's two types of living between having intention and creating from the heart versus no intention, which is the Zen Tao approach. Which tells us to trust in what comes without interfering, with no wishes. What is the balance between those two, and which one is the one that we want to gear more towards?
Well, it is not one nor the other. It is both. For it is to be aware that you are a conscious creator through your intent and thought, and to align with that is unfolding for you of your highest good simultaneously. So you may move through life unconscious of the creation process that is occurring through your intent and thought that you're not aware of, or you can consciously choose with your intent to move in a particular way which aligns those frequencies with you. However, it is that beyond the self of what you think of in a sense, the small self, there is this beautiful unfolding and magnificent universe that is taking place that is not necessarily in alignment with your intent, that you are also operating within the construct of it, of the collective, such as the planets are orbiting right now and the sun is shining and it will set this evening, and all those things. And it might be a very rainy and dreary day, And it is that it's not through your intent that that is changing. That is the unfolding of what is happening. And when you become in resistance to whatever is occurring at any moment, you actually then are moving offline to the direction of the intent of your creation, which sometimes is difficult to fully comprehend or to fully wrap one's understanding around. Because it is the willingness to fully engage in the unfolding of what is happening that opens up the space for the creation of your intention to align more with the vibration of that unfolding. So when you are in resistance, I wish it would be something, or it should be different than it is, such as it's a rainy day, it should not be raining because I have a soccer game today. That resistance to what is actually gets in the flow of the intent that you had, which maybe was to be a professional soccer player. And you think, well, that's gotten in the way of that. That's not what I was intending in creating, but the unfolding of that is happening. And so you cannot resist that. And it is in letting go of the resisting of that and fully embracing the unfolding of what is, that and bringing excellence to that, whatever it is, in whatever is bringing itself to you. And then you may still hold the intent of being the soccer player, recognizing you can't play in the field today, not resisting the fact that it's raining, but embracing that it's raining and allowing that to be an opportunity in another way in the direction of your intention to amplify your skill sets, which may be reading about plays in the soccer book, or listening to something, or taking a rest and letting your muscles relax. Perhaps that's actually what they need at times, rather than pushing, and trusting that in the unfolding of things around you, without resisting, it is moving and continuously directing you in the direction of your original creation and intent. And then embracing what is unfolding at any given moment with excellence. Doesn't mean then to have a cop out of whatever it is that's occurring, or to bury one's head in the sand, or to do whatever life is presenting to you with excellence. Fully engaged in the unfolding of whatever that may be, without resistance to what it is, keeps opening up pathways and doorways that ultimately are leading you to the original intent. But they may lead you in a way that you, in the ego mind, how you thought it should or would unfold, it may take you on a different journey. But ultimately, the intention is what's driving you there, and the unfolding of life is aligning with you as you trust and have faith within it by fully engaging in it with excellence.
Thank you, Raphael. And so the next question from there is, how can we heal and release trauma on a cellular level so that we can heal physical ailments created by that trauma? Is there a way to permanently heal trauma? Thank you.
Well, we did this in the DNA code. And we recommend this person do the DNA code because it's extremely powerful. As we go in to the DNA, that is stored information that is informing your being based on the fact of a trauma that got stored there, that gets unraveled then through the torus field as it unwinds and is released, allowing that energy to have its life and run its course, so that it opens up a space of vacancy for higher frequency to be embedded, to align you with a place of wholeness and wellness. However, to go into full completion, depth, and unraveling of that would require the work that we did in the code. We can go perhaps into a meditation about how to do that, to support you in that. But that was a very, very important code that goes into the different organs, the cells, the tissue, the different parts of the body where stored trauma gets held in the memory, where the story gets literally deeply embedded on a cellular level that then moves into the DNA, that then is informing your human experience, that when shown light upon it, allowing it to unwind as the double helix unravels through the torus field, it begins to have its life and the spaciousness begins to move, because trauma is just like a stored heavy dense blocked energy of a story that is still running itself within your energetic field, that is creating that is taking up a lot of space that could be utilized to amplify or to receive life force or innate intelligence for the healing of the physical, emotional, and mental body. And so the importance of unraveling it and allowing it to dissolve is critical in the evolution of yourself as a human being. However, at times one needs to express or go into the story of the trauma, and we recognize that, and that is part of a paradigm that had unfolded in your history to let go, and it's somewhat helpful, but that can also begin then to create the repetitiveness and the anchoring in of the story itself. And so we prefer to go into it from simply and purely an energetic perspective without even needing the narrative of the trauma itself to be revisited, but the energy itself to be released by facing it and being present with it. For it is the presence of it around the trauma, and it becomes enfolded within that and dissolves. So perhaps a simple thing to do, rather than we cannot go into the whole DNA code, but we recommend you're doing that, is to hold energetically the trauma, the story of the event, and to be aware of it as energy, and to bring your full conscious awareness like a spotlight upon it, and to hold it perhaps in one hand, in your left hand, and then in your right hand, simultaneously bring your awareness to stillness, to complete and absolute presence, opening the heart to radiate love, holding the highest frequency that you possibly can maintain, and then begin to try to hold the trauma of the story and the present simultaneously. It's such a beautiful practice. What you will recognize is that it's impossible. And the higher frequency then will envelop the trauma, and it will begin to merge into the presence. And perhaps that is the simplest and quickest way I can explain in this now moment, but would prefer you to go into greater depth in the code.
Thank you so much, Raphael. And the DNA code is definitely amazing. So the next and final question today is, as we become more conscious through deep introspection and the infusion of love and compassion into our being, the desire to consume sentient beings, which I think they mean meat, diminishes. Why is this so related to this? Are there spiritual consequences for consuming these sentient beings?
Oh, well, it's simply whether it's done consciously or unconsciously. It's really what it comes down to, and perhaps 95% of those consuming what you call sentient beings are doing it unconsciously in a manner that is not loving, where they are consuming those who have been slaughtered out of fear, and they are receiving the imprint of that dense energy. And then as they begin to awaken more, they recognize that the density of that is not in alignment with who they are. But that does not inherently mean that consuming through a conscious way, in a sacred way, in the food chain relationship of consuming meat in itself inherently is wrong. It is the way that it is done. And so if you return to indigenous cultures and their way of communing with the land, their way of giving to the land, their way of honoring the land, the way in which they have ceremony around that, in which they have killed, the way that they communicate, they honor the sacredness of it, and then the receiving and the blessing of the nourishment in the body that at times may be needed. that is very, very different than going to the supermarket and taking something that's in a plastic container that you don't know where it came from or how it was fed or how it was treated, or if it saw the light of day, and it's filled with fear and hormones and antibiotics, and it's dense, and you're chewing it quickly and without any blessing or thinking of it at all, and then throwing it out. Those are two very different ways of connecting. So part of the cycle of, let's say the lion devouring the elk or whatever it may be, that is also part of nature, part of the unfoldment of this way here in the collective that nature takes place. And in a state in which you are very much immersed in nature, and you are gathering the berries and picking the fruit and growing the vegetables and attuning, and part of that whole process is around other aspects that you are consuming. It's different. And so if you're choosing to eat meat, then the minimum is the blessing, the awareness, conscious of its origin, how it is fed, how it is treated, where it is coming from, the sacredness of it, and all of that. This perhaps is something you all very well already know, but it's easy to forget about it and just go have a hamburger and not think about it. And so it is in that unconscious behavior, the density of that, yes, can impede the flow of spirit moving through you, because it's just another blocked or dense energy that needs to be processed, needs to be eliminated, needs to be cleared, needs to be stored, needs to be understood, needs all of those things. We want to address one more question that perhaps is not here. And beyond that, because it is important, because we're really attuning right now to the children, and a lot of children are suffering. And there was a question about how do we help the children, the younger ones right now, to find their way or be who they are. And of course, as always, the most important thing is to love them, right? For them to be loved and accepted, to be cherished, to know they're worthy, to hold them, that original base of a sense of security. When we were talking about the narcissism, is when you're not feeling stable and security, where you don't have that secure attachment early on. That's key. But in addition to that, and that's obvious, what we want to bring your attention to is attention. That what's happening in your culture around the globe and with your electronics is that the attention span of the child is shortening and shortening and shortening and shortening, and they want everything instant gratification, and they want it fast. And we want to remind you that loving a child does not always mean giving them everything they want. And sometimes there's confusion about that. And it is important for them to have time to feel disappointed, to take them for a chocolate ice cream, and chocolate ice cream is out that day, and they're disappointed, and not run to take them somewhere else to get it. It's okay for them to be disappointed. It's okay for them not to get everything they're wanting instantaneously. And it's very, very important for them to be bored. Because what we are sensing here is that the creative life force is flow within the child is getting shut down, because there are no moments of boredom. Because if they have a moment of boredom, they can look at their phone or their iPad or their television or something to fill that void. And it is in boredom that the creativity flows, that something else arises, and that the ability to solve a problem comes forward. Because what's being created here in some of the children is an inability to solve any problem, or to feel disappointed, or for their creativity to flow, because every need is being met every single second. And why we want to bring this up is because what's happening is that there is a generation here that has not fully been encoded with the higher DNA frequencies. That others are coming in now, and they are more adjusted to the electronics, and they are aware, and they intuitively, it's like an extension of themselves. At age 2 or 3 or 4, they know how to do things that adults do not know, and that's all right. They're connecting into this new way that is unfolding, but you also have to maintain a balance with that, with a very strong connection to the electromagnetic field of the earth, and that they are grounded in the earth, and that they have time to be in nature and in spaciousness where they have nothing to do and there is no plan, so that they're just sitting perhaps in the grass, or then they start to pile up the leaves or pile up the rocks or climb a tree or make a sandcastle. It is very important for the development of their brain. Otherwise, there's something that's happening in the children that is disturbing from our perspective. So we want to encourage you as parents and grandparents to allow them to be bored, to not have to fill their every need, to take them to a function or a place or to do something every minute, to be stimulated, but to take away stimulation, and to allow them to sit, and they may be annoyed by that and bored and say they're bored, but from the boredom, the creativity, the innovation, the ability to create is born. And then when they're doing that, something might happen, and they might be putting up the rocks, and then the rock might fall down, and then they'll learn how to balance it or problem solve, or they might get themselves stuck in a tree, and they'll have to figure out how to maneuver their body and get themselves down. And so it's important for them to problem solve on their own without jumping in, figuring it out, fixing it, helping them, over-parenting, making sure they are safe. Because loving them does not mean smothering them. Loving them means allowing them to be on their journey, and for them to have space to explore, to go in the woods, to have some time where there's no constrictions around them, and there's all this fear that something could happen, that you are holding the children too tight. And we wanted to share this because you asked about narcissism, and narcissism is can evolve out of two aspects. One is non-attachment, not feeling secure and safe, and almost being neglected. But it also can evolve from helicoptering, is what you call it, or over-parenting, over-stimulating, making sure, taking care of, fixing, making it all better, to the point that there's no room for their own sense of problem solving, failure, feeling disappointment, self-soothing. So we just want to remind you of that, because it's on our mind, because we see with this stimulation and this 1 second or 90-second intervals of continuous flashing of information that they are being bombarded at all of the time, there's no spaciousness for presence, and then there's no spaciousness for boredom. There's no spaciousness for the creativity to arise. And the children moving forward that will become your leaders, that will propel your culture forward, will be spoken to and brought awareness, to their presence, to their consciousness, deep conversations. Where did they come from? Why are they here? What are their soul contracts? How can you assist them in that? What are the agreements you have together? Is it recognizing them as a sovereign being, allowing them to fall down, allowing them to scrape their knee, to fall off their bike, to climb in the tree, to go in the lake, to go in the stream, not to be to let them solve problems, not to put them in danger, but to on the edge of it, so that they create a sense of independence. This is needed more and more than ever, because it was used to happen just naturally, because you were sent outside to play a game or to have tag or whatever it may be. And so much of that is lost in that everything is either being bombarded through increments, or it is so organized by adults and overseen in an organized activity or sport that there is no freedom for naughtiness, for getting in trouble a bit, for, oh, let's try this or let's try that, where this learning takes place. And it is very important. So we're wanting to just to mention that today.
Thank you, Raphael. And I think that's all for today.
All right. We are loving you very dearly, and perhaps today was a bit of more practical information that we hope will assist you in the evolution of your process. So we adore and love who it is that you are, and are here continuously to support you in any way that we can. You are moving into an important date of the 12-12-22 Ascension Portal, as we are inviting the birthing of Christ consciousness into the next code, as you align with that frequency of presence, surrendering, opening, and allowing. Many blessings and good day. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for jumping on this morning. I appreciate you adapting to the new time. I will see you soon. I love you. Have a beautiful week. My IM members, we're into integration, and Christ consciousness key code starts 12-12. Mwah! Have a great day. Bye. Love you.